Back in August 2024, one of India's biggest health insurers got hit with a cyber attack. But this wasn't just another headline about a data breach. Oh no, this story had it all. A truly massive data leak, a wild accusation of betrayal from the inside, and a very deliberate, very public disinformation campaign. So let's dive into what really happened with the Star Health breach and figure out what it teaches us about security in this crazy digital world.
So, here's how we're going to unpack this whole thing. First, we'll get a handle on just how huge this breach was. Then, we'll get into that explosive accusation right at the heart of the story. After that, we'll follow the digital breadcrumbs to see what really went down, look at the fallout for the company, and then finally pull out the key lessons that everyone needs to hear.
All right, let's start with the sheer scale of this incident. It's kind of hard to even wrap your head around just how massive this thing was.
31 million. The personal data of over 31 million customers was just out there. To put that into perspective for you, that's about the entire population of Malaysia. We're talking names, addresses, tax records, and deeply personal medical histories, all in the hands of a hacker.
And the amount of data? A whopping 7.24 terabytes. The hacker, who called themselves Zen, pulled out pretty much everything. And this wasn't just your basic contact info, this was the blueprint of millions of lives. Government ID photos, detailed medical reports, private insurance claims, the whole shebang. But here's where it gets really weird. Instead of just selling the data on the dark web, Zen did something else. They made it all publicly searchable through Telegram chatbots. That meant pretty much anyone, anywhere, could look up someone's sensitive info with just a few clicks. It just amplified the damage and, honestly, created mass panic.
But believe it or not, the size of the breach wasn't even the most shocking part of this story. See, the hacker didn't just leak the data. They pointed a finger directly at someone inside the company.
And there it is. That's the claim that turned this whole thing into a media firestorm. The hacker alleged that the company's own chief information security officer, the person whose entire job is to protect the data, was the one who sold it to them. In an instant, this went from a story about a hack to a story of corporate treason. So that became the question on everyone's mind. Investigators, the media, millions of customers, everyone wanted to know, was this just a catastrophic security failure, or was it a deliberate betrayal from the very top of the security team?
Well, to answer that, cybersecurity analysts had to start peeling back the layers of what turned out to be a really clever disinformation campaign, and it all started with the hacker's so-called proof.
The hackers showed this video of an email conversation as their smoking gun. But when forensic teams like CloudSec took a look, they realized it was a total fake. The hacker had just used the Inspect Element tool in their web browser to change the text on the screen. It's a simple trick, really, but it was enough to create a convincing piece of fake evidence to frame the CISO.
Once they dug in, the real story started to come out. And nope, it was not an inside job. It actually all began 2 years earlier, in 2022, when the CISO's login details were stolen by malware in a completely separate incident. Fast forward to 2024, Zen finds those old credentials floating around, uses them to get into Star Health's system, and then finds a huge technical flaw to download everything. The whole story about the CISO, that came after the hack. It was just a calculated move to create chaos and cover their tracks.
So what was that big technical flaw they used? It's something called IDOR, or Insecure Direct Object Reference. Now, in simple terms, what that means is once the hacker was logged in, they figured out they could see any customer's file just by changing the customer ID number in the web address. It's kind of like having a key to one apartment that, with a little jiggle, can open every single other door in the building. A massive, massive vulnerability.
So, finding out the truth was one thing, but dealing with the consequences, that was a whole other battle. The damage to Star Health was immediate, it was severe, and it hit them from all sides.
The market reacted in a heartbeat. The company's stock just plummeted, down 11% as soon as the news got out. That wiped out a huge chunk of its value and completely rattled investor confidence. And then, of course, the regulators came knocking. By July of 2025, India's insurance authority slapped them with a penalty of nearly 3.4 crore rupees for violating cybersecurity rules. It was a very clear signal that the authorities were not messing around. But the financial hits were just the start of it. The company was facing a total crisis of customer trust. 31 million people were now vulnerable to identity theft. The scandal led to at least 4 senior executives resigning. And maybe the scariest part for the company, it put them right in the crosshairs of India's brand new data protection law, which could mean future fines as high as 250 crore rupees. Ouch.
The whole episode is just a massive cautionary tale. So, after all that chaos, what can we actually learn from this disaster? What are the big takeaways for other organizations? If there is one lesson to take away from this whole mess, it's this: being compliant is not the same as being secure. Ticking a box on a form or passing an audit is the absolute bare minimum. It is not a magic shield. Star Health had all the right certificates on the wall, but it didn't stop the hackers one bit.
The first place to start goes right back to how the attacker got in: password hygiene. This whole thing was possible because of credentials stolen 2 years ago. So simple stuff like using password managers to create unique passwords, forcing multi-factor authentication, and, this is the big one, actually getting rid of old login details from past leaks. These things aren't optional anymore. They are absolutely essential.
And that brings us to the bigger picture, right? Security has to be baked into a company's DNA. It means you're always monitoring for threats, not just doing a checkup once a year. It means you're constantly testing your APIs for holes, like that IDR flaw. It means you're building security into your systems from day one, not trying to tack it on at the end. And, maybe most importantly, it means creating a culture where everyone, from the top down, sees themselves as part of the defense. So we'll end on this question. The Star Health breach is a really stark reminder that those certificates on the wall mean very little to a determined attacker. It forces every company, and really every single one of us, to ask a hard question. Are we building things that are truly secure, or are we just busy checking the boxes?